Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents, voters, and people that are running for Abbotsford City Council. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for your mayor. Abbotsford and myself owe the Mission RCMP men and women a tremendous thanks. Of a conspiracy and something that was going to be impossible to prove. Mr. Billionaire and train tycoon with his Mennonite mob and his Mennonite establishment, how they ran Abbotsford from our police department to the institutions. How no resident or any citizen could step their name forward and run in the city election unless they went through their training. For example, I want to talk about this man right here, Mark Werkentin. Mark Werkentin was on the Abbotsford Police Board. And when he was on the police board, on the Abbotsford Police Board, which he was handpicked by Henry and Henry's friends, the Mennonite establishment, then he was allowed to roll over, and when he rolled over, he was allowed then to come to a city council. And when he did, he magically won over everybody else where he was sitting on his ass in London, England. Mark Werkentin. And Mark Werkentin did this. And Mark Werkentin put all his signs as a land title officer and a lawyer on a development of Ron Funk, which was Henry's partner, where nobody else was allowed. And it was preferential treatment for the developer. And this is why we need the RCMP. The land titles will be opened in the search. How many big developers does he do the deals for? And why he's passing decisions on the city council. Mark Werkentin also was aware and is aware that Dave Sidhu is a sitting city council. His dad's Andy Sidhu, and Dave Sidhu owns with his dad and he stands to inherit the piece of property on Tracy Road when there's 5,000 farmers through the Fraser Valley, that ag processing plant by Vitalis that was pressually hunted, the city staff said, and given to Dave Sidhu and his friends, Ross Siemens and counsel, Kelly Shahal, who's a probation officer who is on oath to the court, a significant lift to help Dave Sidhu pay him back for using the South Asian newspaper and causing his dad his job at UFV rigging an election. Something you don't want to do when you know the RCMP are involved. They know how the games are played. This was to control the town for development, Ron Funk's job sites, the federal and provincial grants coming in and ripping Abbotsford taxpayers off, rigging the decisions at Cooper's Farm over 3,000 people, changing the zoning for Rob Funk, and they figured they'd never get caught because as a lawyer, as a city council, and as a probation officer and all the ties we had, nobody would know it was considered business. It wasn't about the town. And Mark Werkentin, you can see it. Started to look for the things that would red flag. Mark Werkentin didn't show up to call out the changing of the zoning on Rob Funk's, the Cooper's Farm. He didn't show up on the Mackenzie Bog, Henry's attempted murder, Sandy Blue saying I grabbed him up the dress. They were working together in alliance as a mob behind the city, owning the city and listening themselves enriching it. Mark Werkentin knows that Dave Sidhu and Andy Sidhu owned that property on Tracy Road, and Dave then stood to gain by lifting his dad's property, and he knew there was 500. He knew it was wrong for Vitalis to say that they were going there to create this on ag land. They were waiving their taxes to get it on ALR land rather than on commercial. There was 5,000 other pieces of property, and this is why Henry was using the Abbotsford Police. Mark Werkentin, who came from the Abbotsford Police, had a lot of friends there that were pulling favors, the city said, and they would be cleaning Mark's ass up. And Mark knew better as a lawyer. He should have called it out in ethics and morals, and being an officer of the court, he didn't do it. He was into the mob, and the mob owned him, and like Henry could bully Eric Nivel, he could bully everybody. Henry owned the Abbotsford Police, and that's how he could get him threatening me, Mo, and everybody to stay out of the election. He believed he'd never get caught. The Abbotsford police believed that they would be trusted with the safety of Abbotsford will never be questioned, and everybody who leaks the information will have to come to us. We're the only person you can go through to charge, and it'll be impossible to prove. Till the proving officer, Darren Braun, Henry's own son, who was in front of Ross and Dave Sadu on insider trading to help his dad's land, leaked the information and went to the Mission RCMP. And he said, how many dirty fucking Abbotsford, well, pardon my language, how many dirty Abbotsford fucking officers are involved in this hit and run? The threats on your life and covering up that inside information of using that city for a bank account. He knew it right out the get-go. He didn't have to even say it's a conspiracy. He knew that these guys set up an elite money market to create insider trading. On job sites, rigging the job sites, this is why Olenoff wanted to threaten that Henry had counsel in his house. He was rigging the decisions. You weren't going to fool the RCMP, neither would the Abbotsford police. Then came along this Mark Werkentin, and I want to give this to you today. Emmerich Moran is running for the city council. Emmerich Moran is another lawyer, Mark. How many lawyers do we want on the city so we can embezzle Abbotsford's taxpayers' money? How many? Emmerich Moran then was magically pointed, not a democracy, just like pardon me, Sandy Blue, to the Abbotsford police. And what he was doing with the Abbotsford police is running around gallywanging with the Abbotsford top police officers, creating himself a market to market himself for the election coming up. And it was well shown that if you're handpicked by the establishment, this is Emmerich Moran. And I want Mark Werkentin to watch this as I unfold how these city insiders told. And they're leaking the information left, right, and center because the RCMP have to come in. Then they threw, this is a private party thrown for Emmerich Moran. When you leave the police and the police can tell you this man can be dirty, this man now can rig the decisions for council, and he's proved to run for city council over everybody else. With all the candidates that are running, he gets chosen by Corky Neufeld, one into the establishment, that we ran against Mike Dion because we wanted Mike out, and now he's hanging with Mike. Wow, Corky, did you screw up or did you screw up? To a private and elite party where Mike Dion shows up, Simon Gibson, the city council of conflict of interest, and there he is, Mark Werkentin, the bigger lawyer. And he comes there, and they're showing with also Jerry Palmer, the downtown core lawyer, and they escorted him through the things that make you the city council behind Abbotsford's voters back. What the establishment needs for job sites. So basically, I guess, in my opinion, they asked Emmerich Moran, can you be dirty? And he said, yes, that's my opinion, and that's what probably happened. And I knew it was wrong. You're not allowed to have that kind of help. Then Emmerich Moran then would have the same as Mark Werkentin, because Mark could magically win in England. How he did it, he went to the Queen, and he must have paid the Queen off to win. You know the Queen would have took a bribe from Mark to win. Then he's entitled to the parading of the Chamber of Commerce. He'll be entitled to the answers for rigging. He'll be entitled to all the protection by the electoral officer on his signs. He'll be given the South Asian Chamber of Commerce through Dave Sadu. He'll be given Dave Sadu's paper. I don't know if they can get into UFV. They screwed that up pretty good. And he'll be given police shadowing, and the police will be there to shadow him because he's now one of theirs too. And this is what they were doing over the community. And it was no longer a democracy or a democratic process. But the man that set it all up, that stood to gain, was the elite mob leader himself, Henry Braun. And he owned them that much. When he left the city of Abbotsford, came out a crowd of protesters and directly picked me out with his car, hit and ran me, Mark Werkentin, fled from the scene, and he asked Mike Sir, top investigating officers and Abbotsford police to cover him. That want to tell you they want to stay in this town. They believe that they should be trusted in this town. They can't. We don't know how much they've been paid off if they did it for Henry, how much other stuff they took, how many bribes they took, how many innocent people been framed, how many of their own families have caused drive-by shootings or shootings they haven't charged and opened it all up. The law should have never been looked away from, not for Henry Brown, not for Mark Werkentin, not for Dave Sadu, not for Ron Funk, not for Mike Sir, not for Ed Fast, and not for Mike DeYoung, who was Attorney General that threw a party. This was the mistake, and the RCMP knew it. Too many witnesses, from John Rustad to all the dignitaries to everybody in Abbotsford. So I wonder this, Mark Werkentin, you have no choice. Henry's going to push your head down in that bloody toilet bowl, and he's going to tell you, if you run, Mark, and you get elected, there's no way you could be prosecuted. And the city informers told me, Dave Sadu was so scared, he didn't know what to do. Same with Ross. And they believed by running and all the stuff that they set up that they would have the protection. You can see Ross wearing it in his face. He's really hurting. His wife's got to be there now in the debates. His family will be there. His dad will be there when they hear everything by the witnesses that'll come forward as I bring them to my podcast and crank her down. Unbelievable. I'm about this town. And I'm about this town because the RCMP pulled me back up. And I'm about shit-kicking the hell out of Ross Siemens. And I'm about shit-kicking the Abbotsford Police top investigators. They have to be let go. You can never have this kind of stuff, because from now on we don't have a law no more. And when I see them dying on my street, I know somebody took and retaliated because they were pulling favors from each other. And when they were throwing a funeral, that is a funeral to make them look good, and it's not a funeral out of that they were in the line of duty. And that is what needs to be done. So I'm going to ask you now, Mark Werkentin, as a city lawyer, and you're a city council, and you're on the thing, and as an officer of the court, Dave Sadu's property is insider trading. And I'm standing beside it and being beside it and listening to Henry telling you what Mike DeYoung could know because he was a former Attorney General. You're all idiots. You're completely stupid. This has the world stage. It has elite politicians, and now it has David Eby in trouble because it looks like David Eby was aware of Dave Sadu's property and what Ross set up, and was aware of what Kelly Green and what they were doing, and it was aware of Vitalis's money and the Vanderpoels and creating that on that insider trading when there was 500 or 5,000 farmers it could have went to, and the preferential trading, and then creating a co-op, and then not allowing the farmers on it and using that as a buffer zone. And the Vanderpoels are privately owned, and then they stood to gain. And then they were going to enrich themselves. And now it looks like Dave Sadu walked in and said, out of the $30 million, where's my or David Eby walked in and said, where's my $7 million? And nothing was given to the farmers, and we lifted Dave Sadu's. It's insider trading. And because the private police were owned, they do not know how to go after it. They don't know which way to turn. Gangs. I'm coming out with Amric Moran and the chief, and we're going to go lap dance, and I'm going to go to the air show. I'm going to go to the carnival show, and I want to tell you, Abbotsford, I know you're really frustrated with the crime and gangs. The whole bloody company got caught because Darren Brown opened the door. And then what they were going to do, use violence and beat the witnesses and Mr. Pelican up to save their ass, and that's what it boiled down to, under uniform, knowing that the law will punish you 100 times. Abbotsford City Council, his name is Mark Werkentin. He's a land titles office, and this used to be Ed's Fast's old practice, right, Ed? And he knew what he was doing, and he knew he sat on them decisions of Dave Sadu, and all he does is when he runs around and he goes, what do you think the chances of the RCMP are going to come in? What do you think the chances? Well, I tell you this, Mark, I'll give you a little bit on the end. David Eby is tied to Henry Brown. That's why he pointed him up in Kamloops. That's why he hired Bob Rich, and he hired Mike Sir, and he hired everything. But let me tell you this, Mark Werkentin, when the city manager knew it was insider trading, he fled and he used retirement. David Eby is going to drop Henry faster than a hot potato, and he's going to leave. Unless Henry can be really blackjacking him, unless Henry owns in, and David Eby is partners into the verse up in Kamloops too, which I will find out. I'm live, Abbotsford residents. I'm running for your mayor. I made it clear, but I'm also making something clear to you. We owe the Mission RCMP for pulling me back up, for fighting for your town, and taking assholes like that onto the world and say, as your mayor, the first thing I will be doing is bring him before the Supreme Court, having his law license lifted and his bar, and every job that he has sat on with his practice that was run through the city was insider trading, and I'll make sure it goes under forensic audits and audits that he loses it all. And if Mark was really smart, he'd fly down to Martha Stewart and he asked Martha Stewart, what happens when you're in jail? Nobody's going to walk away from it, not even Peter Sparanese, because people were getting targeted and left for dead for massive job lifts and job threats. And the Abbotsford police couldn't control it because they were friends. The law took a back seat to their friendship. And this is why this guy was in England on his ass when Abbotsford first ran him. I'm alive, Abbotsford, British Columbia, Mark Werkentin, Abbotsford, British